His name was Ray Darn, 32 years old, the first sword of the Solin Empire. Not a title, not a position. A rank given once a generation to one who surpassed all others so completely that comparison lost meaning. Blood magic, the rarest class, one of 5 known bearers in the entire history of the Empire. Level 94 in a world where the ceiling was considered to be 100. 3 friends. Lord Vane Solar, aristocrat, light mage, level 88. Known since childhood. Vane grew up in palace corridors, Ray on the street. But they met at the academy and understood that the difference in origin meant nothing when 2 people thought the same way. Or thought they did. General Rhea Crest, combat mage, level 85. The first woman in the history of Solin to receive the rank of full general. Sharp, direct, with a honesty that seemed absolute. Seemed. Archmage Theo Wald, scholar, mind mage, level 82. The smartest person Ray knew. Loved books more than people, said so himself. Ray thought it was a joke. The 4 formed the Council of the Sword. Unofficial, without papers, without ceremonies. Simply 4 of the strongest who had kept the Empire in balance for 10 years already. Good times. Then came the day when the good times ended. Autumn. The capital of the Empire. Solane Prim. Ray was returning from the northern border. 3 months suppressing the uprising in the province of Garn. Fast, clean, without unnecessary casualties. The method he always preferred. Talk first, force only if talking was impossible. It worked. It always worked. He returned in the evening. The city greeted him with lights and the smell of autumn markets. At the palace gates, Vane. "Been waiting for you," he said. The same smile as always. Open. Warm. "Glad you're back." "Did something happen?" "No." A pause Ray didn't notice. "Just missed you. Will you come by? There's wine from the north. Special, they say. I will. Let me wash up from the road. Of course. In an hour?" "In an hour." They parted. Ray washed up, changed, thought about the bed and 3 days of rest he had mentally allowed himself. An hour later he came to Vane. The wine really was special. Dark, with that long aftertaste that lingers for hours. They drank. Talked. Vane about politics, about new appointments at court, about how the emperor was aging and his son Eric was becoming an increasingly prominent figure. Ray half listened. Politics had never been his element. The sword, the border, order, those were his. The rest, let Vane handle it. Then darkness. Sudden, without warning. Not fatigue. Something in the wine. The wine. A final thought, and then nothing. He woke not in Vane's chambers. Cold. Stone. Real darkness, without a single source of light. Ray raised his hand, hit a wall beside him. The other hand. A wall. He stood. The ceiling was low, he barely didn't hit his head. A cell. Small. Square. 4 steps in each direction. A door. Thick, metal, no handle on this side. In the door, a slit. Narrow, at eye level. Ray approached the slit. Looked. A corridor. Stone. Torches every 10 meters. Empty. He tried magic. The blood didn't respond. Chains on his wrists with suppression runes. Small, precise, someone's work, good work. Theo. Only Theo could make such runes. "Someone," said Ray through the slit. "Explain what's happening." Footsteps, a guard. Young. "Condemned Ray Darn," he said. "From a paper. By the Imperial Court, you have been found guilty of the murder of His Highness Prince Eric Solin. Sentence? Confinement in the lower chambers for a period of 1,000 years. Silence. "When was the hearing?" said Ray. 3 days ago. Witnesses. The guard. Into the paper. Lord Vane Solar. General Rhea Crest. Archmage Theo Wald. 3 names. 3 people he had known for 20 years. "Understood," said Ray. The guard left. Ray stepped away from the door, sat on the floor. Pressed his back to the wall. Vane. Rhea. Theo. He thought for a long time. Anger came and went, faster than expected. Something colder and heavier remained. Understanding. Not why they betrayed, that could come later. First, what to do. He stood, began examining the cell, every centimeter. The lower chambers, monolithic rock, several levels beneath the palace. A place where no sound from outside reaches. 1,000 years. Ray sat. Mages lived long. Level 94, very long. They want me to go mad or die. Neither will happen. He closed his eyes, made the decision quietly, without words, without spoken vows. Simply decided, when I get out, they will answer, each one. I will get out when I'm ready. We begin. 3 things. Body, mind, mana. Body, running the perimeter. For hours. Push-ups, pull-ups on the door ledge, static exercises. Without good food, mass doesn't grow. But quality, different, denser, more enduring, more precise. Mind, memories. Every day, one period of life. Childhood, the academy, the war with the northern clans, the Council of the Sword. In detail, faces, conversations, sensations, then analysis. Where were the signs? There were signs. In hindsight, obvious. Vane always wanted more than he had. An aristocrat without real power. A beautiful cage. Ray gave him friendship but not power. Rhea, honest. Too much so. Such people break before the choice between honesty and loyalty and choose what they call the greater good. Theo loved the idea more than the person. Not a joke. The truth. A person who places an idea above people is capable of anything for its sake. Prince Eric. Ambitious. Young. What he gave the 3 in return. To Vane. Power at court. To Rhea. An army without the Council of the Sword overhead. To Theo. The resources of the Imperial Library and funding for any research. To each his own. And to all 3, remove the one who stood in the way. Ray accepted this as fact, did not forgive. Simply set emotion aside. It got in the way of thinking. Thinking clearly matters more. Mana. Theo's runes blocked the flow, but did not destroy it. Like a dam on a river. The water doesn't flow, but it accumulates. I will let them work. Let them block. Let the mana accumulate. Pressure turns coal into diamond. Ordinary mana is like water. It flows, takes the shape of a spell. What was forming inside, different, like resin. Slow, dark, incredibly dense. Blood mana under 10 years of pressure. Ray did not rush. Sat for hours in meditation, felt something thickening inside, concentrating. He recorded it in memory, every change, methodically. He understood. The body is not separate from blood magic. The body itself is the conduit. Every cell is part of the system. A new method. Meditation and movement simultaneously. Running the perimeter with concentration on each muscle group. Feel how the blood moves, how the heart pumps, how the pressure changes in every vessel. After a year, he could hear every organ. Not a metaphor, literally. Heart, lungs, liver, each with its own separate rhythm. Together, a symphony. If I can hear every cell, what can I do with it? He thought about this for the next 5 years. The answer came in the 30th year. Ray sat in meditation, concentrated on the heart, felt the rhythm. Steady, 70 beats per minute. He tried mentally to slow it. The heart slowed. To 50, to 30, stop. He brought it back to normal. Quickly, with fear. The first time in 30 years something had frightened him. He sat, breathed. I control my own heart. Without magic. Only by will and understanding. This was new. Not from the academy textbooks. Not from the combat techniques he knew. Something that had grown on its own from 30 years of confinement and concentration. The next month, carefully, methodically, he studied the limit. What else could be controlled? Everything. Every organ. Every system. Body temperature. He could raise it to the maximum and not burn. Reaction speed. He could accelerate it 3 times over without magic. Pain? He could shut it off completely. The body had become an instrument of a level no one who trained at the academy had ever dreamed of. The guard who sometimes talked died. Naturally. Old age. Ray looked the same as he had at 32. A new guard. Young. Didn't talk. Ray was not upset. In 50 years, he had learned enough. Vane. First advisor to Emperor Eric. Rhea. Marshal of the Army. Theo. Grand Archmage, head of the Academy. The three at the top. They got everything. Good. That means there is something to lose. 100 years of accumulation. Ray felt inside something that no longer resembled mana in the usual sense. Too dense. Too dark. With that quality of things that have been compressed for so long that they have turned into something fundamentally different. He tried, without a spell, without a technique, simply directed a small part toward a finger. The rune on his wrist trembled. For the first time in 100 years, it trembled. Ray immediately pulled back. Not yet, but he remembered. The new mana is stronger than the runes, only a matter of quantity. We continue. 250 years of meditation. Ray understood. Blood magic is not simply spells through blood. It is control over the life force as such. Blood is only one channel. The most obvious, the most direct. But not the only one. Every living cell carries a part of the life force. Blood simply transports it. Which means, if one can control the cells directly, one can bypass the ordinary limitations of the class. Standard blood magic uses blood as a weapon. Attacks from the outside. What is forming in me is different. Life force from within. Without blood as an intermediary, this is no longer blood magic. This is something without a name. Half the sentence. Ray sat by the wall, looked at the runes on his wrists. They still worked. Technically, still blocking. But what had accumulated inside over 500 years, the runes could feel it. Ray saw the metal of the chains had darkened. The runic markings had worn away by a few percent. The pressure from within was slowly eroding them. Another 200 years or so and the chains will break on their own. But we will wait longer. Let it accumulate. He thought about the three. Over 500 years, several generations of guards had changed. Ray saw them young and saw them grow old. Sometimes he talked to them, briefly, carefully. Vane died 140 years ago. Naturally, light magic did not grant such longevity as blood magic. 1. Rhea died 200 years into Ray's imprisonment. A combat mage, an active life. The body wears out. 2. Theo lived longer. A mind mage, meditation, a calm way of life. He died in the 380th year of Ray's confinement. 3. All three were dead. Ray sat with this knowledge for a long time. Those who betrayed died of natural causes, lived their lives, got what they wanted. Just? No. He thought about why then bother getting out, if they are gone. The answer didn't come right away, after several years of reflection, because they were not alone. Prince Eric used them, directed them, created the condition under which three betrayed one. Prince Eric became emperor, still rules, with magical life extension support. The system that made possible what happened is alive. That is the true goal. He stood, continued training, 700 years. Ray meditated, concentrated on the central mana reservoir, and felt, not just pressure, movement. The mana that had been accumulating for 700 years under the blockade had begun forming a structure on its own, without his involvement. Like a crystal that grows in a saturated solution, inevitably by its own laws. Ray watched from within. The structure was unfamiliar. Not one technique from the Academy described anything like it. Not circular like ordinary mana reservoirs. Not linear like combat channels. Spiral. A multi-layered spiral. Each level denser than the previous. At the center, a point of concentration of such density that Ray could not look at it even with his inner sight without sharp pain. This is not a reservoir. This is a core. The chains cracked. Did not break. Cracked. A small crack in the right wrist. The runic marking at the site of the crack went dark. Ray looked at this. For a long time. Theo's runes were the best possible. For 850 years they had held. But nothing holds forever against what had been growing within. He closed his eyes. Focused. carefully directed a small part of the mana toward the crack. It passed, came out. A tiny dark red flame on the tip of his finger. The first magic in 850 years. Ray looked at it. Quietly, almost soundlessly, he laughed. For the first time in a very long time. Not joyfully. Simply, something let go. Soon. He extinguished the flame, pulled the mana back, continued waiting. Another 150 years. Let it accumulate further. Let the core strengthen. When I get out, I will get out properly. The final year. Ray didn't count the days. No need. He felt time differently after 1,000 years. He simply knew. He sat by the wall, closed his eyes, thought about who he had been at 32. Young, strong, confident. Thought he understood people. Thought friendship was forever. Thought honesty and strength protect. They don't protect. Understanding protects. Understanding of what people do when they are afraid. When they want something more than they can bear. When they are offered enough. Vane wanted power. Enough. Rhea wanted purity of action without ballast. Enough. Theo wanted knowledge. Enough. Eric gave each of them enough. And I gave friendship, which means nothing when enough is placed against it. He opened his eyes, looked at his hands, the chains, cracked, darkened, with extinguished runes on 2/3 of the markings. Holding these last years more by inertia than by strength. It's time. He stood. Ray approached the door. He placed his palm on the metal. Felt, 20 centimeters thick, steel with magical reinforcement. 3 bolts on the outside, runic seals along the perimeter. A year ago, this would have been difficult. Now? No. He closed his eyes, concentrated on the core. 1,000 years of concentration, 1,000 years of pressure. Mana so dense it seemed material, dark red, almost black. With that quality of things that had been compressed for so long they had acquired their own weight. He directed it into his palm, slowly, in a controlled manner. The runic seals on the door felt it. They lit up, trying to resist. Good seals made by imperial masters. They would have held against any known mage. Against an unknown one, no. Ray added pressure. The seals went out one by one. Quietly, without a flash, they simply ceased to exist. Then, the metal. It didn't melt, didn't explode. Simply, the pressure from within exceeded the structural strength. The door deformed slowly. The bolts on the other side bent, broke. The door fell forward, into the corridor, loudly, the first loud sound in 1,000 years. Ray stepped over it, walked out. The corridor. The torches the same as 1,000 years ago. Different torches, different holders, but the same. Stone walls. The smell of damp and old stone. 2 guards at the end of the corridor turned at the sound. They stared. Ray looked at them. Young, early 20s, guilty of nothing. He raised his hand, a dark red glow around his fingers. Quiet, steady, not threatening, simply visible. I am leaving, said Ray. Don't interfere and nothing will happen to you. The guards looked at him. At the glow, at the cracked chains on his wrists, at the door lying in the corridor. One stepped back, the second turned and ran. For reinforcements. Ray walked down the corridor, calmly, without hurrying. Let them run. Let them raise the alarm. Let them know. He had walked out. The ascent, 7 levels up. Ray walked the staircases he hadn't seen in 1,000 years. Narrow, stone, with the same torches. The architecture hadn't changed. The lower chambers were built for centuries. At the 3rd level, the first resistance. 10 guards. Well armed. Imperial guard, not just watchmen. 2 of them mages with spells at the ready. Ray stopped, looked at them. Blood magic in its old form attacks through blood. Bleeding, control of blood flow, a blood clot strike. The new is different. The mage on the right released a spell. Lightning, well-formed, fast. Ray raised his left hand. Mana came from his palm in a thin layer, nearly invisible. The lightning struck this layer and went out, was absorbed, not deflected, absorbed. Life force absorbs energy. That was theory. Now, practice. The mage stared at the spot where the target should have been. Ray walked forward. The guards parted. Not from cowardice, from instinct. Something in the way he moved, something in the glow that was not aggressive but was absolutely certain, spoke to the body before the mind had time to decide. Ray passed through their ranks. No one struck from behind. Good. At the 6th level, something different. Not guards. One person, elderly in an archmage's robe, standing in the middle of the corridor, alone. Ray stopped. Looked. Unfamiliar. Not Theo. Theo had died 500 years ago. The new Grand Archmage. Ray Darn, said the elderly mage, his voice calm. Without fear. I am Grainver, Grand Archmage of Solon. A pause. I knew this day would come. Knew, repeated Ray. Theo Wald's runes. Magnificent work. But the calculation was for 500 years at most. A pause. No one thought you would last 1,000. No one thought I would last at all, said Ray. True. Grainver looked at him carefully. What do you intend to do? Leave. And after? That is my business. It is the Empire's business, said the Archmage. A man of your strength. It is the Empire's business. Ray looked at him. Clever. He came alone, showing that he doesn't regard force as an argument. He's talking, meaning he wants to negotiate. What does the Empire offer? Asked Ray. Freedom, said Grainver. Official, documents, rehabilitation, full removal of all charges. After 1,000 years. Yes. A pause. The archives were opened 200 years ago. The case of Ray Darn was reviewed. It was established that the evidence had been fabricated. Grainver looked directly. Officially, you have been innocent for 200 years already. Simply, no one knew how to free you. Silence. No one came to open the door, said Ray. 27 years ago they tried, said the Archmage. 4 of the best rune masters. The door didn't open. The seals held from the inside. Your mana was pressing against them from the other side. Ray was silent for a moment. Interesting. Who sits on the throne now? The dynasty has changed 4 times. Now, Empress Say. The 28th generation from Eric Solane. 28th generation. Eric is gone. Where is the grave of Eric Solane? Asked Ray. Grainver looked at him. In the Imperial necropolis. A pause. What do you intend to do with it? Talk, said Ray. The Archmage looked, then stepped aside. Cleared the passage. The documents will be ready upon your return, he said. Ray walked past, stopped beside him. Grainver, he said. Yes. 1,000 years ago, 4 betrayed 1. 3 have long been dead. The 4th as well. A pause. The system that made it possible is alive. Another pause. That is what I intend to fix. Not through violence, through what I know how to do. A final pause. You understand the difference. Grainver was silent for a long time. I understand, he said. Good. Ray walked on. The 7th level. The exit. Heavy gates. Open. Someone had ordered them opened. Grainver, probably. Ray walked out. Morning. Autumn. As it was back then. As it was 1,000 years ago when he was returning from the north. The air cold, carrying the smell of the city. A different city than the one he remembered. The same streets, different buildings, the same layout, different architecture. 1,000 years is a great deal for stone and wood. Ray stopped at the exit from the lower chambers. Looked at the city. People, some noticed, some did not. Those who noticed saw a man in the coarse garment issued to prisoners, with cracked old chains on his wrists, with a dark red, very faint glow around his hands. He wasn't controlling it. It came out on its own, had been coming out for years upon contact with air. They stared. Ray paid no attention. He stood, breathed. Air. Real air without the smell of stone and damp. For a long time, He simply breathed. Then he looked at his wrists. He removed the chains. Easily, simply. They were held together by cracks. The pressure from within had been holding them more than the metal itself. He released the pressure. They fell. On his wrists, marks. 1,000 years. Thin, white scars from the runes that had worked for so long they had become part of the skin. A reminder. Good. The imperial necropolis, on the northern edge of the city. Ray walked on foot, across the entire city. An hour, maybe more. He watched. Much had changed. Buildings taller, magical constructions, different new schools and techniques that hadn't existed before. People dressed differently. But the city, the same city, alive, noisy, with markets and the cries of merchants and children running somewhere about their own business. 1,000 years and people are still the same. They want the same things, fear the same things, betray for the same reasons, and they live, every day, in spite of everything. The necropolis, quiet, large, well-kept, with tall pines and that particular silence of places where many dead lie. He found Eric's grave easily. A large mausoleum at the center, with the imperial crest, the first emperor of a new dynasty. Such men are not forgotten. He stood before it, looked at the stone. Eric Solin. Ruled for 700 years with magical longevity support. Died 300 years ago. Lies here. Ray felt no hatred. He had expected it, and was surprised to find none. 1,000 years is a great deal even for hatred. Something else remained. Something cold, clear, without heat. You got what you wanted, said Ray. Quietly. Power, longevity, the empire. 700 years you ruled. A pause. I spent 1,000 years in the dark. Another pause. And I have at least as many ahead of me. While you have stone above your head. Not triumph, simply fact. He took a small slip of paper from his pocket. He had found it in the cell. A guard had left it when he retired many years ago. A tiny scrap, with a few words. Good luck, old man. Ray gave a quiet smile. He folded it, put it back, turned. Walked away from the mausoleum. The documents were ready as Grainver had promised. Ray sat in the Archmage's study. Reading. Official rehabilitation. Removal of all charges. Compensation. A laughable figure. Grainver himself acknowledged this with the expression of a man who felt awkward. 1,000 years cannot be compensated with money, said Ray. No, agreed the Archmage. Then why? A symbol. A pause. The state acknowledges its error. That matters. Even if it is not enough. It matters, agreed Ray. Not for me, for the system. Grainver looked at him. You said yesterday, the system that made the betrayal possible is alive. A pause. What do you mean? The system in which one person in power can use others as instruments. And they agree, said Ray. Vane, Rhea, Theo, they were not bad people to begin with. They became instruments because the system rewarded it. A pause. Remove the system of reward. Remove half the betrayals. How to remove it? That is a long conversation, said Ray. We have time. Grainver looked at him. You intend to stay. I lived in this empire for 32 years, spent 1,000 in its dungeon. A pause. This is my country, not Eric Solin's, not Vane's. Mine. What do you want to do? Ray thought. 1,000 years of reflection. Many options had passed through his mind, many discarded. One remained. Teach, he said. Teach. I spent 1,000 years studying what no mage at the academy had studied, said Ray, because the conditions didn't allow it. A pause. Now they do, and I know what no one else knows. Another pause. It must be passed on, not buried with me. Grainver was silent for a long time. You understand that your level now, he said carefully, likely exceeds anything in the Empire. Likely, agreed Ray. That frightens people. I know. And you intend to teach. Strength that frightens and teaches no one is useless, said Ray. Strength that teaches changes the world. Silence. Grainver rose, extended his hand. Ray looked at it, shook it. "Welcome back," said the Archmage. Evening. Ray rented a small room. Simple, a habit of 1,000 years of minimalism. Nothing more was needed. He sat by the window. The city below, evening, lit up, with the noise that never fully quiets. He thought about the three. Vane, Rhea, Theo, dead 300 to 500 years. They cannot answer. They are gone. So I carry their answer myself, not for them. For what came after them. The system lives. The system that created the condition in which they betrayed lives. That is the real opponent, not people, the system, and not with a sword. You cannot kill an idea with a sword. You kill an idea only with a better idea. He took out a notebook, bought it on the way, opened the first page. He wrote at the top, not a date, not a title. One line. What I know must outlive me. He began to write, slowly, carefully, what he had understood over 1,000 years, about magic, about the body, about the mind, about strength that grows not from battles but from understanding. He wrote for a long time. Outside the window, night gave way to pre-dawn twilight. Ray didn't notice. He wrote. He had at least 1,000 years ahead of him, perhaps more. There had been enough time to become what he had become. Now there was enough time to do what needed to be done. He lifted his gaze from the notebook. Dawn over the city. Slow, autumnal, with that orange light that spreads low and warms everything it touches. The first dawn in 1,000 years. Ray looked. For a long time. Good. 3 days after walking out. Grainver invited him to the academy. Ray came in the morning. The building was new, not the one he remembered. The old academy had stood in the west of the city. Gray, austere, with those narrow windows mages had always favored for some reason. The current one was spacious, with high ceilings, with glass walkways between the wings. Bright. 1,000 years and tastes had changed. The students stared. Rumors had spread quickly. The young ones didn't know exactly who it was. But they knew that the lower chambers had opened. That someone had broken a door from the inside. That the Grand Archmage had come out personally to meet him. Ray paid no attention to the stairs. He had grown used to the absence of people. Now he was growing used to their presence. A process. Grainver was waiting in his study. With him, 2 others. Lindsay, a young woman, 28 years old with the calm gaze of people who think before they speak. A space mage, level 71. The best student of the last decade. Grainver said this without exaggeration. Core Dog, a man around 40, broad, with short graying hair. An earth mage, level 78. Professor of combat magic, 20 years at the academy. Meet them, said Grainver simply. Ray looked at the two. Lindsay looked directly. Not with fear, not with reverence. Appraisingly. Good. Core Dog nodded, briefly, professionally. A man accustomed to meeting the powerful without losing his head. Sit down, said Ray. He sat himself. The others did too. Grainver said you want to teach, said Core Dog. Directly, without preamble. What exactly? What is not in the Academy's curriculum? Be more specific. Ray looked at him. This man doesn't accept abstractions. Good. Magic without spells, said Ray. The body as a conduit rather than a shell. Mana as a structure rather than a flow. A pause. And an understanding of why strong mages lose to weak ones. And weak ones sometimes defeat strong ones. Core Dog was silent. Lindsay tilted her head slightly. She was interested. Is this theory or practice? She asked. 1,000 years of practice without a theoretical foundation, said Ray. Then, building theory from practice. Back to front from the standard method. Back to front is often more precise, said Lindsay. Agreed. Core Dog looked at his hands, then at Ray. Can you demonstrate? Yes. Right now, if you like. Core Dog stood, pointed to the door. The training hall, second wing. The training hall was large, with protective runes along the perimeter, a high ceiling, a soft floor covering for falls. No students. Working hours, classes in session. Only the three of them, plus Ray. Core Dog removed his robe. Beneath it, simple clothing, comfortable. He stood in the center. "Attack me," he said to Ray. "Full power. Are you certain?" "The hall's protective runes hold up to level 100, said Core Dog. "By the characteristics known to us, you are level 94. They'll hold." "My level has changed over 1,000 years." Core Dog looked at him. "By how much?" "The system stopped showing it at level 112, said Ray. Then simply stopped showing it at all. Silence. Lindsay looked at Ray. Grainver closed his eyes for a second, accepted something inwardly. Core Dog's face didn't change. "Then a small portion," he said. "About 5%. All right." Ray stood opposite him, focused, found the right level. 5% of what there was. A small flow, controlled. He directed it, not with a spell, simply directed the mana like a wave. Without form, without technique, without activation words. Simply, pressure of a dark red color moving toward Core Dog. Core Dog raised a shield. A good one, earth-made. Dense. The wave arrived, touched the shield. The shield didn't break. It bent. Core Dog took one step back, then held his ground. "Enough," he said. Ray withdrew it. Core Dog looked at his hands. At the shield still holding. 5%, he said slowly. Approximately, without a spell, without an activation technique, without words. Yes. How? "That is exactly what I want to teach," said Ray. A long silence. Lindsay spoke. Quietly, clearly. Without activation words. "That bypasses most counterspells. Because counterspells respond to phonetic structure or to the moment a spell is being formed. If there is neither, there's nothing to intercept." "Correct," said Ray. "That changes all combat tactics," said Lindsay. Not as an exclamation, a statement. All of it. "That is why I am here." Core Dog looked at Ray. "When do we begin?" he asked. "In a week." Grainver allocated a hall. A small one. Ray had asked for a small group to start. 5 students, selected by Lindsay and Core Dog. Ray arrived without notes, without a lesson plan written on paper. He simply sat down. On the floor, cross-legged. The students watched. They waited for him to stand at the board, to start explaining spell diagrams. "Sit down," said Ray. On the floor. They exchanged glances. Sat down. "Close your eyes." They closed them. Carefully, with the awkwardness of a first lesson. "Feel your heart," said Ray. Silence. "Don't listen. Don't think about anatomy." A pause. "Feel it. Where it is." 30 seconds of silence. "Got it?" asked Ray. Several nods. Uncertain ones. "Good." A pause. "Now feel the rhythm. Don't count the beats, just the rhythm. Like music, silence." Longer. Then one student. Young, about 18, reddish-haired, with freckles. "I feel something else," he said quietly. "Beside the heart." "Different." "What exactly?" "Warmth. Quiet. As if something lives there." "That is your mana," said Ray. "The reservoir. You are feeling it, not through a spell just like that." A pause. "Open your eyes." The student opened them. Looked at Ray. "What is your name?" "Yun?" "Yun?" Ray nodded. "You just did what the Academy's standard program covers in the 3rd year of study. In 5 minutes." Yun stared. "Because no one explained that you just need to feel it," he said slowly. "Yes," said Ray. "Because in the standard program, theory first. Diagrams, formulas, structures." A pause. "But the body knows before the theory. The body is smarter than the mind thinks," Lindsay observed from the corner. Not as a student, simply watching, writing something down. Ray noticed. "What are you writing?" "The method," said Lindsay. "Sensation before knowledge. That is a pedagogical principle the Academy doesn't have." "Many academies don't," said Ray. "Where did you get it?" 1,000 years without a teacher," said Ray simply. "Learned only this way. Tried. Felt. Understood. Then built the theory. A pause. Back to front, as they say. Lindsay nodded. Wrote something else? Ray returned to the students. We continue. A month of lessons. 5 students in a month covered what the standard program gives in a year. Not because they were smarter than others, because the method was different. Feel before you know. Do before you understand how. Understand through experience, not through a description of experience. Yun, the reddish-haired one with freckles, turned out to be more capable than he appeared. A fire mage, level 54 at the start of lessons. After a month, the system showed 61, 7 levels in a month. Nothing like it had been seen at the academy. I didn't do anything special, said Yun one day. Just felt like you said. That is what is special, said Ray. Most people cannot simply feel. The mind gets in the way. It wants to explain before it consents. And can you switch the mind off? Learn to? Over 1,000 years. Yun looked at him. What is it like? 1,000 years. Ray considered whether to answer. Then, long, he said. And not boring. People think it's boring. No, not if there is something to occupy the inside of your head. You didn't go mad. No. How? I gave myself a task. A pause. A person with a task doesn't go mad. The one who goes mad is the one who waits without purpose. Yun nodded. Thought. And the task was to get out and take revenge. To get out and fix things, Ray corrected. Revenge is a goal that ends. Fixing, a goal that continues. Lindsay came to every lesson, didn't participate, observed, took notes. After a month, she asked for a conversation. They sat in a small room. Evening, rain outside the window. I want to understand something, she said. Personal. Ask? Those 3, said Lindsay. Vane, Rhea, Theo. They died hundreds of years ago. You walked out and went to Eric's grave. Then here. A pause. Where is the hatred? Ray looked at her. What do you mean? An ordinary person would have walked out with rage, would have destroyed something, demanded something, screamed. Lindsay looked directly. You didn't. You are calm, as if 1,000 years of injustice is simply a fact, not a wound. It is a fact, said Ray. Doesn't it hurt? It hurts, said Ray. It hurt 1,000 years ago, and it hurts now when I remember. It hasn't passed? A pause. But pain and hatred are different things. Explain. Pain is what happened to me, said Ray. A fact. You can acknowledge it and carry it. A pause. Hatred is what I do with the pain. A choice. Another pause. I chose not to make hatred out of the pain. I made understanding from it. Understanding that betrayal is always possible. Yes? That's not sad. Very, said Ray, but honest. A pause. I prefer sad honesty to joyful lies. Lindsay was silent for a long time, looked out the window at the rain. I understand you, she said at last. Not because I went through the same. Simply, I understand. I know, said Ray. How? Because you didn't ask out of curiosity, said Ray. Out of experience. Someone betrayed you. Silence. A teacher, said Lindsay quietly. 3 years ago, he took my work, submitted it as his own. Became a professor on that basis. A pause. Nothing terrible by the measure of 1,000 years in a dungeon. The scale doesn't matter, said Ray. Betrayal is betrayal. Small or large, the mechanism is the same. A pause. Did you turn it into hatred? At first, yes, said Lindsay. Then no. Then simply, work. I work better than he does. That turned out to be enough. You see, said Ray, you already know. Lindsay looked at him. For the first time, something soft in her usually even gaze. You are a strange teacher, she said. A strange student of his own life, answered Ray. Logical that he'd be a strange teacher. 2 months after walking out. An invitation to the palace. Ray came alone. Without the escort Grainvare had offered. The palace had changed. Not beyond recognition. The architectural skeleton was the same. But a different spirit. That palace under Eric had been heavy, with the grim gleam of power that isn't sure of itself and so presses down on everyone around it. This one, calmer, lighter, a good sign. The throne room was not where he remembered. It had been rebuilt. No longer the long, narrow corridor of power where a visitor walks 100 meters under the gaze of guards, feeling small. A round hall, with equal distances between all the entrances. Someone had thought about this. About how space shapes relationships. Empress Say, young, 26 years old, 6 years. With the direct gaze of people who have been accustomed to responsibility from an early age. Not to power, specifically to responsibility. The difference is visible at once. She stood when Ray entered. The Empress rises to meet a guest. 1,000 years ago, Eric never did this. Ray darn, said Say. I am glad you came. Thank you for the invitation. They sat, not at the throne and at its foot, at an ordinary table by the window. Tea, simple, without ceremony. I read the case, said Say, all of it. The original materials. The review from 200 years ago, the reports on the liberation attempts. A pause. On behalf of the Empire, I offer my apology. That is inadequate, but I say it sincerely. I accept it, said Ray. Sincerely is enough. What do you need from the Empire? Little, said Ray. Permission to work at the Academy, access to the archives. A pause. And one conversation about the system. What system? The one that allowed 3 respected people to betray one, said Ray, and was rewarded for it rather than punished. Say looked at him. Speak. Ray spoke, at length, not with anger, with analysis. 1,000 years in the dark had given one thing with absolute certainty. Time to think about causes rather than only consequences. The system of court loyalty that rewarded service to a person rather than to a principle. The system of appointments that gave power to those who pleased rather than those who were right. The system in which betraying one person could be a logical career decision. Say listened, did not interrupt, occasionally made notes. When Ray finished, a long silence. You are describing half our current problems, said Say at last, in the same words as my advisors, but from a different angle. They describe the symptoms. You describe the cause. 1,000 years looking at the same thing from one point of view, said Ray. Sometimes the point of view matters more than the information. Do you want to participate in the changes? I want to understand the scale, said Ray, then decide. Honest, always. Say looked at him, then smiled. Briefly, unexpectedly. Grainver said you were strange, she said. I hear that often, said Ray. He meant it as a compliment. I know. 6 months after walking out, Ray was adjusting. Slowly, methodically, as he now did everything, to people, to noise, to the need to explain his decisions aloud rather than simply knowing them inwardly, to the fact that there is someone nearby, not always pleasant, sometimes tiring, but alive. The Academy. The group of 5 students had become a group of 20. Word of the method was spreading fast. Ray had no objections but set a condition. Small groups. Not an auditorium of 100 people, 20 at most, because the method requires hearing each person. Yoon continued to surprise. Level 71 after 6 months. From 54. 17 levels in half a year. Ray watched him carefully. A rare type. Not the sharpest, not the most technically precise, but he can feel without a filter. He hears what the body says before the mind has time to object. That is rare. One day after a lesson, Yoon stayed behind. May I ask a question? A personal one? You may. Have you ever regretted not dying there? Asked Yoon. In the dungeon. Ray looked at him. Why do you ask? I think about it, said Yoon quietly. Sometimes things get so bad that you think it would be easier not to continue. A pause. Not now. It used to be. Another pause. I'm wondering how you held on. Ray was silent for a minute. I didn't hold on, he said. That's the wrong word. Holding on means resisting what pulls you down. Spending strength on resistance. A pause. I didn't resist the darkness. I lived in it, accepted it as a condition, stopped fighting it and started using it. How? Darkness removes the unnecessary, said Ray. When there is nothing, only the most important remains. What you are without everything external. A pause. Most people are afraid to see that. I looked. For a long time, until it stopped being frightening, Yun thought. And what did you see? He asked. When you looked. That I am alone, said Ray. And that it is not a catastrophe. A pause. Loneliness stops being frightening when you understand that you yourself are sufficient. Not happy. Sufficient. Those are different things. Yun was silent for a long time. Thank you, he said. For what? For an honest answer, said Yun. Most adults say everything will be fine. You said it will be dark, but you can live in the dark. That's the truth, said Ray. Truth is more useful. Yes, Core Dog came to the lessons regularly, not as a student, as an observer, then as a conversation partner. In the evenings, they sometimes stayed together in the hall. They talked about combat magic. Core Dog knew his field very well, about tactics, about how war had changed over 1,000 years. It had changed greatly, said Core Dog. In your era, a mage in battle is the central figure. One strong mage decides the outcome of a battle. Not now. Now, teamwork. Groups of mages, synchronized spells, tactical formations. A pause. One mage, no matter how strong, loses against a properly built group. Interesting, said Ray. It's a problem for you. Why? Because you are alone. Core Dog looked directly. The strength is enormous, but solitary, against a properly built group. Even you could lose, Ray thought. You are right, he said. And that is one more argument for why teaching is necessary, said Ray. Not creating one strong person, creating groups that think together. A pause. Synchronized groups with the new method. That's not just tactics. It's a new collective understanding of magic. A different level. Core Dog looked at him. You are not thinking about this as a combat application. No. Then how? As a change in how people understand strength, said Ray. Strength that comes from one person creates dependence. Strength that comes from understanding belongs to everyone. A pause. When the three betrayed me, they didn't only harm me. They left the Empire without a single source of strength. Another pause. If strength had been distributed, the betrayal of one would not have mattered so much. Core Dog was silent for a long time. You have been thinking about this since 1,000 years ago. Since the 80th year of confinement, said Ray. Approximately. That is not revenge. No. That is architecture. Yes, said Ray. Core Dog stood, extended his hand. Ray shook it. I am with you, said Core Dog. Not as a student, as an ally. I know, said Ray. I have known for a while. A year passed. Ray sat by the window of his room, the same small room he had rented on the first day. He hadn't moved. He had grown used to it. Enough. He looked at the city, thought about what had been a year ago. The door of the dungeon, metal under his palm. The corridor, the air outside, the necropolis, Grainvere's study. It felt like long ago. It felt like yesterday. 1,000 years, strangely, changes one's perception of time. A year feels very short, and very long at the same time. What had changed in a year? 20 students who learned differently from all who came before them. Yun, who grew from 54 to 78 in 1 year. Lin Se, who wrote 3 theoretical works on the new method, the first of their kind, are already being discussed in academic councils of other cities. Core Dog, who began changing the combat magic curriculum. Slowly, against the resistance of some professors. But changing. A conversation with the Empress. One, then a second, then a third. Se turned out to be someone who truly listens. A rarity for someone wearing a crown. Several changes to the court charter. Small, almost imperceptible, but Ray saw them as correct. In precisely those places where the system created conditions for betrayal. Small, slow, correct. He took out the notebook, opened the first page, the one he had written on the first night. What I know must outlive me. He wrote beneath it, a year after. The beginning exists. We continue. He closed the notebook. Outside the window, an evening city. Lights, noise, autumn again, like back then. A year had come full circle. Ray looked at the lights. Vane wanted power. Ria wanted purity of action. Teo wanted knowledge. Each received it and died with it. I wanted none of what can be taken and lost. Only to understand. Only to pass on. That cannot be taken away. He rose from the window. Tomorrow. A class at the academy. A new group, 5 unfamiliar students. They will sit on the floor with closed eyes and learn to feel their own hearts. A simple beginning. Everything great begins with something simple. He lay down. Closed his eyes. The darkness did not frighten. It would never frighten again. He fell asleep. 5 students. Ray looked at them before they had a chance to sit down. The method was quick, not always precise, but it had developed over the year. The first 30 seconds. Just watch. People in the first half minute of a new place have not yet had time to put on a mask. They show what is real. The first, tall, around 20 years old. He kept himself slightly apart from the others. His gaze swept the perimeter, the exits, the walls, not anxiously, professionally. The habit of someone who always knows where the door is. A combat mindset, likely a military family. The second, small, around 17. She pressed a notebook to her chest. She looked at Ray with that hungry attention of people who came for something specific. Not for atmosphere, not out of curiosity, for something they needed. She thinks a lot, possibly too much. The third, heavy-set, with a good-natured face, around 22. He was chatting with his neighbor, not nervously, simply used to filling silence. A sound mage, most likely. Such people often chose this class. Sociable, superficially easy, will look deeper. The fourth, a woman, older, around 35. She came alone, without history on her face. That rare quality of people who know how not to carry the past on the outside. Dressed simply, equipment good, but without ostentation. A practitioner. Experienced. Interesting. Why did she come to retrain? The fifth, a young man of around 19. Red-haired, freckled. Ray stopped, then understood. Not Jun. Similar, but different. A brother, probably, or simply a coincidence of type. Sit down, said Ray. On the floor. The familiar pause. They exchanged glances, sat. The tall one last, with that slight delay of people who are used to assessing before obeying. He sat, meaning he assessed, and decided it was fine. My name is Ray Darn, said Ray. You know who I am, or you have heard something. Most of what you have heard is true. The smaller part is exaggeration. A pause. I spent 1,000 years in darkness, that is true. I broke down the door of my prison and walked out. That is true. That I intend to kill, break, or use any of you in some way. That is not true. Another pause. Questions now or after class? The small one with the notebook, immediately. Do you remember every day of the 1,000 years? No. I remember what matters. The rest compressed. A pause. Like a book. Everything is there, but you don't read every letter? How many levels do you have now? The system stopped counting, said Ray. That is all I can say with certainty. Is it frightening when the system stops counting? No. It is liberation, said Ray. When there is nothing left to measure by, you stop measuring. You simply begin to be. The small one wrote something in her notebook. The tall one spoke. For the first time. His voice was low even. Why do you teach? With such power you can do anything. Why spend time on us? A direct question. Ray appreciated it. Because power without transmission dies with me, he said. And I plan to live for a very long time, and I will be bored if what I know remains only inside. The tall one looked at him. Accepted the answer. Nodded. We begin, said Ray. After 2 classes he learned their names. The tall one, Arsol. 21 years old. A wind mage, level 66. Son of a combat mage. 3rd generation. Grandfather, father, now him. The family had given him technique. What it had not given him. Understanding of why. He can do everything he was taught. He does not know why it works. Typical military school. Do it correctly. Do not ask questions. The small one with the notebook. Mia Vel, 17 years old. A mind mage, level 48. She entered the academy at 14, 3 years ago. She writes theoretical works that professors do not publish because they are written too well by a student of too young an age. Teo also once wrote works that were not published. The difference, Mia did not grow bitter. She stubbornly continues. The heavy-set, good-natured one, Senkar. 22 years old. A sound mage, he guessed right, level 59. From a merchant family, the first mage in the line. His parents do not understand why he needs all this. Trade is better. He came to the academy against their wishes. Pleasant. Superficially, genuinely easy. Deeper. Very stubborn. That rare combination which does not make enemies and does not stop. The woman of 35, Nora Tay. A water mage, level 74. 10 years of field mage in the army. Took part in 3 campaigns. Then left. She came to retrain because she felt she was doing things correctly but not right. The difference between correctly and right was unclear. She came to figure it out. A rarity. A person with experience who senses the limit of their method and seeks another. Most people with such experience defend their method to the last. The red-haired 19-year-old, Dei. Just Dei. He said he did not use a family name. A mage without class. The system had not yet determined one. Level 41. He came because June is his older brother. A brother. He guessed right. June says, "You changed him," said Day, at the 3rd class. Directly, without beating around the bush, the same trait as his brother. June changed himself, said Ray. I only showed him a direction. He used to be different. How so? Closed off, said Day. He thought a lot, spoke little, as if he were carrying something heavy. A pause. Now he is not. He became light. He found something of his own, said Ray. When a person finds what is theirs, the weight leaves. You helped him find it. I created a condition, Ray corrected. He found it himself, Day thought. I want that too, he said. To find my own. I don't know what it is, but I want it. Then we start from there, said Ray. Our soul lingered after class. Ray waited. He had seen since the first day that he wanted to say something. My father does not approve, said Arsol, without preamble. He says new methods are a trend. That true strength lies in tradition. What do you think yourself? I think tradition works, said Arsol. My father is a strong mage. My grandfather was strong. The technique has been passed down precisely. A pause. But I feel a ceiling. Level 66. 2 years without growth. I do everything correctly. It does not grow. Why, in your opinion? Because I do things correctly but do not understand, said Arsol. Like a memorized text, the words are right. The meaning, I don't know. Ray looked at him. Does your father know you are here? Yes. His reaction? He is silent, said Arsol. That is worse than if he had forbidden it. Why did he not forbid it? Because I am an adult and decide for myself. A pause. But he is silent in a way that can be heard. A family story. Not the only one of its kind and not the last. Arsol, said Ray, when you learn to understand rather than only do correctly, you will become a better mage than your father. A pause. That is not a break from tradition. It is its continuation to the next level. He will not agree with that. Perhaps, said Ray. But in 5 years, he will see the result. People who love tradition respect results even if they do not approve of the method, Arsol thought. You speak from experience? I was also not approved of, said Ray, long ago. Different circumstances, but the mechanism was the same. And I did what I believed was right anyway, said Ray. Not out of spite. Simply could not do otherwise. Arsol nodded. Slowly, with that movement of the head that means not agreement, but the acceptance of something new. He left. Norate turned out to be different from what he had expected. 10 years in the army, Ray had expected closedness. Military mages were used to saying nothing unnecessary. Information as a resource. Guard it. Nora was the opposite. She spoke a great deal, precisely, without filler, but a great deal. As if she had held it for a long time and was now letting it out. After the third class, she approached. "I need to tell you something," she said. "Not for the classes, just, you should know." "I am listening." "In the army," said Nora, "there is a group. They call themselves the heirs of Eric." A pause. "They have existed for a long time. Quietly." Another pause. "They are not glad that you came out." Ray looked at her. "How do you know?" "I was in the army for 10 years, said Nora. "You hear a great deal." A pause. "The heirs believed that the empire of Eric was correct, that the Sword Council interfered, that removing you 1,000 years ago was the right decision." Another pause. "And that your return is a threat to their version of history." "Their version of history?" "They rewrote it," said Nora. "Over 1,000 years. Slowly, carefully. In the textbooks, Eric is a great reformer. You are a traitor who was justly punished. The official rehabilitation 200 years ago, they blocked its publication in mass publications, only in the archives. Is that so?" Ray accepted this calmly. He was not surprised. 1,000 years had taught him that systems protect themselves. Any systems. It is instinct. "Are they dangerous?" said Ray. "Not a question. Not now." Nora looked directly at him. "Your power is obvious. Direct conflict is suicide for them, but indirectly. Reputation, students, political influence." A pause. "They will work slowly. You did not come here by chance." "No," said Nora. "I came because I want to learn." "That is true." A pause. "And because I believe you should know." "That is also true." "Thank you," said Ray. "It is not necessary." "It is," said Ray. "This is important information and you could have said nothing. You chose to speak." A pause. "That is not a small thing." Nora's face shifted slightly. "Just barely. In the army, you are not thanked for information," she said. "We are not in the army." "No." A pause. "Not in the army." She left. Ray told Grainver that same evening. The Archmage was not surprised. "I know about them," he said. "I have known for 20 years. Why did you not act?" "There are no direct crimes," said Grainver. "A group that adheres to a particular historical version is not a crime." A pause. "Not yet." "Not yet." "When you came out, they became more active," said Grainver. "That was tracked. More meetings? New members." A pause. "The Empress knows." "And?" "We are watching," Ray thought. "The wrong tactic," he said. "Why?" "Because they work with history," said Ray. "Watching people does not change the history they tell." A pause. "To change a historical version, you need another version, a better one, a truer one." "How?" "Miavel writes theoretical works that are not published," said Ray. "Lindsay wrote 3 works on the new method. There are archival materials lying untouched and unread." A pause. "Publish them. All of them. Openly. With full access." Another pause. "Truth that everyone can see is stronger than a lie believed by a few." Grainver looked at him. "You want to open the archives of the treason case?" "Fully." Ray's. Vane's testimony. Ria's testimony. Teo's testimony. What exactly they said. How they worded it. A pause. "Let people read for themselves and decide what to think." "That will strike at the reputation of the heirs." "It will strike at their version of history," Ray corrected. "And without the version of history, there is no foundation." Grainver was silent for a long time. "The Empress must approve." Then, to the Empress. Say listened in silence. Ray laid it out. Briefly, to the point. The heirs. The archives. The publication. When he finished, Say stood. She went to the window. She looked out at the palace garden. "I knew this conversation would come," she said. "I did not know when." "Why did you wait?" "Because opening the archives is not only history," said Say. "It is politics. Several respected families in the Empire are direct descendants of those who supported Eric 1,000 years ago. A pause. Open archives mean that their ancestors were part of a system that committed a crime. They were. Yes? Say turned around. But they are respected families now. Senators, generals, rectors. A pause. That is a conflict. Between truth and convenience, said Ray. Yes. You already know which choice is correct, said Ray. Otherwise, you would not have waited for this conversation. You would simply have forbidden it. Say looked at him. You are an uncomfortable man. 1,000 years in a dungeon teaches you to stop being comfortable, said Ray. What remains is only honesty. A long pause. I need a week, said Say. Negotiations. Preparation. Very well? Ray darn. Yes. If this creates a political crisis, are you prepared for the consequences? I survived 1,000 years in a dungeon, said Ray. A political crisis is acceptable. Say laughed. Briefly, unexpectedly. A genuine laugh. Not a diplomatic smile. Very well, she said. 1 week. Mia Vell approached after class. Notebook as always. She looked from under her brows. Not with hostility, simply the habit of a person who looks up at others and does not like it. I heard that the archives are going to be opened, she said. There are already rumors. They spread quickly. The academy is small in that sense, said Mia. Everyone knows everything. A pause. I want to write about it. About what exactly? About the case? About the betrayal? Not as a historical work, as an analysis of the mechanism? Mia spoke quickly, at the pace of people who think faster than they can speak. 3 people, 3 different motives, 1 action. Why they aligned at precisely that moment? What created the condition? How the system of incentives influenced each one? A pause. That is more important than simply the facts of who said what at the trial. Ray looked at her. 17 years old. She sees immediately what took me 30 years of caves to see. Right, said Ray. The professors will not publish it. When you have written it, bring it to me, said Ray. Lindsay is already working with a publication that publishes outside the academy. A pause. Your works will go there too. Mia froze. Really? Yes. All 3. All 3 and the new one when you write it. Mia looked at him. For a long time. Then something changed in her face. Not joy, relief. As if something she had held for a long time and grown tired of holding could finally be let go. Why do you do this? She asked. Quietly. Not about the archives, about me, about all of us. Because those who betrayed me were once like you, said Ray. Intelligent, capable, with potential. A pause. The system broke them. Slowly, imperceptibly. Another pause. I cannot return what was lost back then. But I can make it so the system does not break you. Mia nodded. Slowly. That is the best answer anyone has ever given me to that question, she said. I keep no others. 10 days later, Say gave her approval. The archives were opened within a week. Fully. Testimony, protocols, correspondence. Everything that had lain sealed for 1,000 years. The reaction, as Say had predicted, political noise. Several families spoke officially. Demanded context, demanded commentary, demanded discussion. They received open debates in the Senate, public ones. Ray did not take part in the debates. He observed. Lindsay wrote an article. One night, ready by morning. A clear analysis of what was in the archives, what it meant, why it mattered now. Published the following day. Mia wrote what she had promised. The mechanism of betrayal, analysis of motives, how the system had created the condition. 20 pages, a 17-year-old author. Published alongside Lindsay's article. The Academy spoke of nothing else for a week. Students read, argued. Core Dog held an open discussion in his combat magic class. Unexpectedly, 3 times as many students came as usual. The heirs were silent. For now. Ray knew that silence, not capitulation. Regrouping. What comes next will be more interesting. Senkar turned out to be unexpected. Ray was used to students arriving with obvious questions in the first classes. How to become stronger, how to grow in level, how to develop a skill, Senkar came with something different. "Teacher," he said one day after class, seriously, without his usual smile, "may I ask a strange question?" "All questions are allowed." "I am a sound mage." A pause. Sound is vibration. Sound magic is the control of vibration. Another pause. The body also vibrates. Every organ has its own frequency. A long pause. Is that the same thing or different? Ray looked at him. There it is. That is why he is here. Where did this come from? "I hear people," said Senkar. "Not words. Frequencies. Every person sounds slightly different. When a person is ill, the sound changes. When they are upset, it changes." A pause. "Blood mages control blood. Mind mages control the mind." Another pause. "A sound mage who hears the body can control the body through vibration." "Yes," said Ray. Senkar stared. "That is not written in the textbooks." "Because no one thought of it or dared to write it," said Ray. "This is a rare type of thinking, connecting what is considered separate. I thought I was losing my mind." "No," said Ray. "You're going in the right direction." Senkar lowered his shoulders. He exhaled. Slowly. "I told no one for 3 years," he said. "I thought they would laugh." "Now tell everyone," said Ray. "This is important." "Why is it important?" "Because what you are describing is sound magic applied to medicine," said Ray. "Diagnostics through the body's frequencies. Possibly treatment through controlling the vibration of a diseased organ." A pause. "This does not exist anywhere. Not in any academy, not in any textbook." Senkar stared. "I am a third-year student," he said slowly. "Yes," said Ray. "And if you write this correctly, you will be the first person to have written it." A long silence. "I am frightened," said Senkar honestly. "Good," said Ray. "Frightened means important. If it is not frightening, it is not important." A year and a half after the release. Ray sat alone in the training hall. Evening, quiet. He was not practicing combat technique, just movement. Slow, deliberate, each step, full concentration on what was happening in the body. The habit of 1,000 years did not leave. The door opened. Our soul entered. Without warning. But Ray had heard his footsteps in the corridor long ago. "My father came," said our soul. "To the academy. He wants to speak with you." "About what?" He did not say. A pause. "But he came himself. He never comes anywhere himself." "Interesting. Where is he?" "Waiting at the entrance." Ray stopped his movement. Took his jacket. "Let us go." Our soul's father, Gorsol, 58 years old, a wind mage, level 81. Large, with the look of a man who had never doubted the correctness of his path. He looked at Ray carefully, assessingly. "Ray Darn, Gorsol." "My son," said Gorsol without preamble. "Level 66, unchanged for 2 years, half a year with you, level 79. "Yes. 13 levels in half a year, approximately." Gorsol was silent. Then, "How?" Ray looked at him. "He stopped doing correctly and began to understand," said Ray. "A big difference. I taught him the correct technique." "I know. The technique is good." A pause. "But technique without understanding is like a powerful sword in the hands of a man who does not know why he is holding it. He strikes because that is what one does." Gorsol was silent for a long time. "You are criticizing my method." "No," said Ray. "Your method gave your son a foundation. Without a foundation, there is nothing to build on." A pause. "I added what was missing. Did not replace. Added." Gorsol looked at Ray, then at his son. Arsol stood nearby. Steady, calm, without that slight tension that appears in people who are next to an authoritarian parent. Changed. It was visible. Gorsol, back to Ray. "What do you do with them?" he asked. "Not with hostility. Sincerely. I teach them to hear themselves," said Ray. "That is all?" "That is enough." A long pause. "I want to observe a class," said Gorsol. Come tomorrow. 10 in the morning. I will come. He turned. Left. Arsol watched him go. Then looked at Ray. He never asked to observe, said Arsol quietly. I know. So something has changed. So you have changed enough that he noticed, said Ray, and wanted to understand why. Jun came after class. Not his own. He simply stopped by. Level 89. A year and a half from 54. Ray looked at him. 35 levels. That is not simply growth. That is a different person. You have changed, said Ray. I know, said June. I feel it. A pause. Sometimes it is frightening. Why frightening? Because it is unclear where it ends, said June. Before there was a clear ceiling. 66, not growing. Everything was clear. A pause. Now I do not see a ceiling. That is good. But unfamiliar. There is a ceiling, said Ray. You simply cannot see it now, which means it is still far away. Did you see your own ceiling? I did, said Ray. At level 112, the system stopped counting. Whether the ceiling is there or further, I do not know. A pause. But it does not trouble me. When I reach it, I will find out. Does anything trouble you at all? Asked June. Ray thought. Yes. What? That I will not manage to pass on everything I know, said Ray. Not because of time. I have plenty of time. Because of the difficulty of transmission. A pause. Some things are understood only through experience. Experience cannot be passed on in words. You can only create the condition under which a person will obtain it themselves. That is why you teach the way you teach. Yes, and that is why the small groups. Yes. A pause. In a large hall, information. In a small group, understanding. June nodded. I want to teach too, he said. Someday. A pause. Not now. It is too early. But someday. I know, said Ray. I saw that from the first class. And? And good, said Ray. Because when I am gone, someone must continue. You will be gone. Someday. A pause. Not soon. But I will be gone. Everything leaves. June looked at him. Does the thought of that not frighten you? No, said Ray. 1,000 years in darkness. You grow accustomed to the idea that everything is temporary. That is not sad. That is honest. A pause. What matters is not how long. What matters is what remains after. June was silent. For a long time. What I know must outlive me, he said quietly. Ray looked at him. The first line of the notebook. Where did that come from? Lindsay showed it, said June. She quoted it in an article. A pause. Those are the right words. That is simply what I was thinking on the first night after the release, said Ray. Sometimes what we think on the first night is the most honest, said Jun. Ray looked at him. 35 levels of growth. And this. This is more important. 2 months after the opening of the archives, the heirs made their move. Not a direct one, as expected. A publication in one of the old journals with a good reputation. Signed by the name of a well-known historian. Long, written in an academic style with references to sources. The argument, the archival documents were partially forged during the review of the case 200 years ago. The rehabilitation of Ray Darn is a political decision and not a historical one. The testimony of Vane, Rhea, and Teo is credible, elegant. Ray read it. Without haste, carefully. The arguments were not without merit, several genuinely difficult points. Where the documentation had gaps, they filled them with interpretation, convincing to those who did not know the details. Grainveer came running that same day. You read it? Yes. What do we do? Nothing directly right now, said Ray. They are attacking your reputation. I know. A pause. A direct response is their level. I do not want to be at their level. Then what? Mia will write a response, said Ray. An academic one, with sources, detailed. A pause. Not me. Her. Why her? because a 17-year-old student who tears apart the arguments of an adult historian is more convincing than me answering in my own defense. Grainver thought. Clever, he said at last. Simply, truth works better than authority. Mia wrote it in 3 days. Not a response, a dissection. Source by source. The methodology of the heirs historian. Carefully, precisely, without emotion. Where the documents had gaps, she explained why the gaps existed, what that meant, and what it did not mean. Where interpretation had replaced fact, she showed the substitution. 28 pages. 17 years old, the author. Published alongside the original article. The Academy again spoke of nothing else for a week. The heirs were silent. Again. But Nora Tay brought information 2 weeks later. They are angry, she said. Seriously? A pause. They are planning something more direct. What exactly? I do not know yet. Nora looked at him. But be careful. Caution is not my style, said Ray. I know. A pause. That is why I am saying it in advance. 2 years after the release. Ray sat by the window, the same small room, the same city below. He was thinking about who he had been 2 years ago. He came out of the dungeon, went to Eric's grave, spoke to the stone, came to the academy. It had seemed like a plan. In reality, simply the next step. Then one more. Then one more. 1,000 years had taught him. You do not need a plan for an entire life. You need the next step. Clear, right, taken now. The rest will appear. He took out the notebook, opened it. Almost entirely filled. 2 years of notes, observations, thoughts. Not systematically, as they came. Then from this, Lindsay made structure for the publications. A good system. He opened the last blank page. He wrote, 2 years. What exists? 20 students who think differently than they used to. 3 published works by Mia, 2 works by Senkar, the first in their direction. Lindsay, 4 works, invitations to 3 academies in other cities. Our soul, level 84. His father comes to every second class, silently. But he comes. Jun, level 91. Soon he will begin to teach himself. Nora found 3 people in the army who think as she does. She brought them. Changes to the court charter, 7 points. Small. Correct. The heirs are active. For now, words. Further will be harder. What lies ahead is unknown. Good. He closed the notebook. Outside the window, the 3rd autumn. Again that smell of the city, that orange light in the evenings. The betrayal was 1,000 years ago. 3 are dead. A 4th is dead. The system is changing. Slowly, correctly. Everything moves. He rose from the window. Tomorrow, class. A new topic. Senkar will speak to the group about his method for the first time. He is nervous. Nora will bring 3 new people from the army. Mia will bring the draft of a new work. Day finally received a class from the system last week. A mage of space and sound simultaneously. The first bearer of a dual class in history. He is confused. He will come with questions. A good morning tomorrow. A good day. He lay down. The darkness, familiar, his own. 1,000 years in the dark and it had become a part of him. Not an enemy, simply a part. Where it is dark, thinking is good. Where it is light, doing is good. Both are needed. He fell asleep. 2 years and 3 months after the release, Ray was walking from the academy. Evening, the streets sparsely peopled. Autumn was already turning into winter, the air carrying that sharp dampness that comes before the first snow. He felt it before he saw it. The sense of mana, a skill that had developed over 1,000 years on its own, without a name, without technique. Simply at some point, Ray had begun to feel the presence of foreign mana as pressure, faint, background, like a smell. Now, 4 sources, around the corner. 2 on the left, on the roof. 6 people, not bad. He stopped. Come out, he said, calmly. Spending time on an ambush is inefficient. A pause. Then they emerged. 4 from around the corner, 2 from the roof. They dropped down softly, good training. All 6 in matching dark cloaks. No crests, no insignia. But Ray could see by the way they carried themselves. Military mages. Former or active. One in front, around 45. A familiar face, not personally, the type. A man accustomed to being listened to. Ray Darn, he said. My name is Van Kess. I speak on behalf of the organization. The heirs, said Ray. Van Kess was not surprised that he knew. We are not enemies, said Kess. We want to negotiate. I am listening. You are influential. The Academy, the Empress, the publications. A pause. This influence can be used in different ways. Another pause. We propose, use it in the right direction, not against us. What in return? Peace, said Kess simply. No complications. Your work at the Academy continues. The students are safe. There it is. The students. Ray looked at Kess. He saw that Kess thought he had said the right thing, that he had found the vulnerability. The students as a lever of pressure. A clever man. He had understood incorrectly. You are threatening me, said Ray. Warning, Kess corrected. No, said Ray. Threatening. Naming things correctly is important. A pause. The answer is no. You do not understand? I understand, said Ray. I understand what you will do after a refusal. You think the students are a vulnerability? A pause. You are wrong. Why? Because if something happens to the students, that will not make me stop, said Ray. That will make me move faster. A pause. A fundamental difference. Kess looked at him. You are not afraid for them. I am, said Ray honestly. That is precisely why I do not agree. The one who agrees to a threat invites the next threat. A pause. The first lesson I learned in 1,000 years. Silence. Kess nodded. Slowly. Then we have nothing to discuss. Correct. Kess turned. The others followed. Ray watched them go, then immediately turned back. Toward the Academy, toward Grainvare. Not because he was frightened, because he needed to act before they did. Grainvare. Core Dog, Lindsay, Nora. 4 people in the Archmage's office. Late. Outside the window, snow was beginning. The first, light, with those small flakes that melt immediately on stone, Ray told them. Nora was not surprised. She nodded, confirming. Van Kess, she said. I know him. A former colonel. He left the army 5 years ago, officially for health reasons. In reality, they removed him quietly. Too loyal to the wrong people. Dangerous, said Core Dog. Not a question. Competent, Nora corrected. That is worse than simply dangerous. The students, said Grainvare. We need to warn them. No, said Ray. Why? Because a warning creates fear, said Ray. Fear changes behavior. Changed behavior is visible. A pause. If the students begin to act differently, the heirs will see that the threat worked. Not as planned, but it worked. Then how do we protect them? Asked Core Dog. Protection is not through fear, through strength, said Ray. Those who have studied here for 1.5 years are not defenseless. Arsol, level 84. June, 91. Nora, 74, with combat experience. A pause. They are not victims. The heirs think the students are weak because they are students. That is not true. Core Dog nodded slowly. But something active is needed, he said. Not only waiting. Yes, Ray agreed. 2 directions. He raised one finger. First, Nora, the army. Those 3 you brought? Are there more? There are, said Nora. We need people who see the heirs from the inside, not espionage. Simply information. Who, where, when. I can organize that. Second, Ray raised a second finger. Lindsay, Mia's and Senkar's works. When will they appear in other cities? In 2 weeks at the Northern Academy. Lindsay spoke quickly. She was already thinking in the right direction. My latest work as well. In a month, The Southern Institute. Can it be accelerated? A week instead of 2. I will try. Good. A pause. The heirs are strong as long as their version of history lives. Every publication that offers a different version weakens their foundation. Another pause. Do not fight them directly. Make their version a minority. Grainver listened. Then, and you yourself? I, said Ray, will speak with Say. Tomorrow. Morning. The palace. Say listened without interrupting, her face steady. Only her hands gripped the cup a little tighter. Van Kess, she said, when Ray finished. Yes, I know that name. A pause. He is a careful man. If he went to direct contact, he decided that indirect methods were not working. The publications, said Ray. Yes. Miavel got to them. Say set down the cup. What do you need from me? An official investigation, said Ray. Not of the heirs as an organization. That is politically complicated. Of specific actions. A pause. Van Kess had 6 men come out for a direct threat. That is against the law regardless of motive. Evidence? There is a witness, said Ray. Me. 1 witness. Level above 100, said Ray. Absolute memory. Sufficient in court, Say thought. This will give them the opportunity to present you as a persecutor, she said. 1,000 years ago they imprisoned an innocent man. Now he is taking revenge on everyone who disagrees with his version. I know. And that is their move, said Ray. Not mine. A pause. My move is facts. 6 men came out on the street. They made threats. That is a fact regardless of interpretation. Say was silent for a long time. Very well, she said at last. We will begin the investigation. Quietly, without publicity at first. A pause. But Ray darn. Yes. If they strike at the students before the investigation is finished, what will you do? Ray looked at her. What needs to be done, he said simply. That is not an answer. It is the only honest answer I can give right now, said Ray. Because I do not know exactly what they will do. A pause. But I know I will not go beyond what is right. 1,000 years I thought about the difference between what is right and what is convenient. I know it well. Say looked at him. I believe you, she said. Day came the next morning, early, before classes. He was sitting by the door of the hall when Ray arrived. Silent. Ray opened the hall. They went in. What happened? Asked Ray. Yesterday evening, said Day. I was walking from the academy. 2 people were following me. A pause. For a long time. All the way home. Ray looked at him. You saw them? I felt them. Day. Dual class. Space and sound. I hear footsteps differently. A pause. They did not attack. They just walked behind me, to the house, then left. Surveillance. A demonstration. They want the students to know they are being watched. Ray sat down. He indicated for Day to sit as well. Tell me how you feel. I was frightened, said Day, then angry. A pause. Now I just want to understand what to do. A good sequence, said Ray. What? Fear, anger, the question of what to do, said Ray. The right order. Many people get stuck on fear or anger. You moved through to the question. That is more important than it seems. Day looked at him. That is not what I need right now. A compliment. I know. Ray, here is what to do. First, tell June. Not for protection, just so he knows. 2 people who know is better than 1. All right? Second, do not change your routes, do not change your schedule. A pause. If you start hiding, they will see it is working. Then they will continue. Not to be afraid. Not to show that you are afraid, Ray corrected. Being afraid is possible, even useful. But do not let fear change your behavior. That is difficult. I know, said Ray. 1,000 years ago, I was also afraid. Of the darkness, of solitude, of never getting out. A pause. The fear was there. I kept training. Fear is not a reason to stop. Day was silent. Thinking. Third, said Ray. Your class, space, and sound. You said you hear footsteps differently. How exactly? Volume, said Day. Direction, distance, the approximate weight of a person. From the resonance with the surface. Radius? About 200 meters in silence. 50 in the noise of the city. Good, said Ray. Use that. Not to be afraid in advance. To know. Knowledge removes half the fear, because what is known is not as frightening as what is unknown. Yes. Day nodded. Something in him settled. Not complete calm, but steadier. They are watching because of me, he said. Because of the classes here. Partly, Ray agreed. Do you regret taking me? No, said Ray without pause. Not one person from this group. Even if we cause difficulties? The difficulties would have come regardless, said Ray. With you or without? A pause. The difference is, with you, there is meaning in what I do. Day was silent for a long time. All right, he said at last, quietly. All right, Ray agreed. Ray told them that same day, both of them. The reactions were different. Jun listened calmly, nodded. I saw those who were following Day, he said. Yesterday. I recognized them. Military bearing, civilian clothes. A pause. I did not say anything right away because I was not certain it was connected. Now you are certain. Yes. What do you feel? Jun thought. Anger, he said. But calm anger, the kind that does not interfere with thinking. A pause. I remember how you said pain and hatred are different things. Anger and rage are also different. Correct. Anger says, this is wrong, it must be corrected. Jun. Rage says, someone must be destroyed. A pause. I feel the first. Good. Our soul's reaction was different. He stood when Ray told them, not aggressively, physically. His body took a combat stance before his mind had time to decide. Who? He said, briefly. Our soul. Who was following Day? Names? I do not know yet. When you find out, tell me. No, said Ray. Our soul looked at him. Why not? Because you want to go and hit someone, said Ray. I understand that impulse. A pause. But that is their game. They want us to strike first. Then we are the violators. They are the victims. They are threatening students. Yes? A pause. And we will respond, not with a blow, with an investigation, with the law. Another pause. That is slower, but more correct, and ultimately more effective. Our soul stood. Tense. Slowly, he said. Yes. While it is slow, something could happen today. Day is not alone, said Ray. You are nearby. Jun is nearby. Nora is nearby. A pause. This is not inaction. This is a different action. Our soul was silent for a long time. Then he sat back down, his shoulders lowered by a centimeter. He accepted it. All right, he said. Reluctantly, but he accepted it. Our soul, said Ray. Yes, what you feel is right. Protecting those who are near, that is right. A pause. The question is only in the method, not in the impulse. Our soul looked at him. My father would have said the same thing. Then your father is right on this matter, said Ray. Our soul smiled for the first time during a class. He smiled rarely, but here he could not hold back. 1 week later, Nora brought information. Van Kess is preparing something large, she said. Not surveillance, an action. I do not know exactly what. A pause. But a date. In 3 days. The ceremonial session at the Academy. The ceremonial session. Once a year, the Academy held an open session. Students, professors, invited guests. This year, a special one. Mia's and Senkar's publications had received the Academic Prize for Young Authors. Lin Se was presenting a joint collection of Ray's group's works. A public place, many people. The presence of Grainvare and part of the Senate. An ideal platform for a demonstration. You do not know exactly what they are planning? Ray repeated. No. Nora. I know there will be people outside and inside. 10 people at minimum, Ray thought. Canceling the session was impossible. That was exactly what the heirs needed. A public capitulation. The academy goes into hiding. Postponing, the same thing. Holding it with a guard detail showed fear. It would change the atmosphere. The students would feel it. No, the session as usual, but prepare differently. He gathered all of his people, Nora, Core Dog, Lindsay, June, Arsol. He explained, "We do not change the session," said Ray. "The students receive their prizes as planned. Lindsay presents the collection." A pause. "But each of you takes a position. Not as a guard. Simply presence at the right points." "If they start," said Arsol. "If they start, you are already nearby," said Ray. "And you?" "I am in the center," said Ray. "As always. Alone." "That is sufficient," said Ray. Cordog looked at him. "You are using yourself as bait." "I am using myself as a point of certainty," Ray corrected. "If I am calm, the session is calm. If I am hiding, panic." Nora nodded. Professional understanding. 3 days, she said. 3 days. The Academy Hall, full. 200 people. Students of all years, professors, several senators, representatives of other academies. Grain Vert at the main podium. Ceremonial with that particular atmosphere of an official celebration that comes once a year. Ray sat in the first row, calm. The sense of mana scanned the hall constantly. Background, effortless. 4 outside. Positions by the entrances. 3 inside. Spread through the hall. They sat well, unobtrusively. But Ray saw them. Mana, a faint pressure from each, ready to activate a spell. 10 people according to Nora's information. He had found 7. 3 outside, probably. Grain Vert began the ceremony. Mia came out first. The Young Author Prize. She took the medal, gave a speech, short, precise, without unnecessary words. 17 years old, before 200 people. Not a single unnecessary movement. She had grown over these 2 years. Senkar followed. His speech was longer. Good-natured with that warm manner that quickly stripped formality from any audience. The hall relaxed. They laughed at one phrase. Ray felt it. The 7 inside also relaxed. Slightly. The atmosphere acts on everyone. Now, Lindsay came to the podium. She began presenting the collection. One of the 7 inside stood up, as if to leave. Naturally, Ray stood too. They both went out into the side corridor almost simultaneously. In the corridor, quiet. The distant voice of Lindsay through the closed door. The man in the corridor stopped. Turned around. Around 35 years old, a sharp face. A fire mage, Ray could feel it. Level around 70. "Ray Darn," he said. "Van Kess did not come himself," said Ray. "No need. What are you planning?" The man smiled slightly. "Chaos," he said simply. "Not murder." Chaos. Panic in the hall, several burns. A pause. The academy does not protect its own. The government does not protect. You do not protect. Another pause. That is the story we will tell afterward. Clever. Not murder. Reputation. Create an event that can be interpreted. "You have 6 outside and 6 inside," said Ray. "I am alone in the corridor." A pause. "Why are you talking to me rather than acting?" "Because I am a smart man," he said. "And a smart man talks to someone stronger before attacking." "You want to negotiate?" "I want to understand," he said. "Why you do this? You came out of 1,000 years of imprisonment. You could have taken everything you wanted. Power, position, everything." A pause. "You teach students. You publish works. You talk to the Empress about the court charter." A long pause. "Why?" Ray looked at him. A sincere question. Beneath all of this, simply a man who does not understand. Because power and position are things that are taken, said Ray. I want what is built. A pause. The difference is in what remains when I am gone. Philosophy. Practice, Ray corrected. Eric took power. Ruled for 1,000 years. Died. What remained? Heirs who hold on to his version of history because without it they lose their foundation. A pause. Is that a legacy? Silence. What will remain of you? The man said slowly. Not a question. He was thinking aloud. People who think differently, said Ray. Works that are read. A method that is passed on. A pause. That cannot be taken away. A long silence. You want me to leave? The man said. I want you and the other 15 to leave, said Ray. Now. A pause. The investigation is underway. Van Kess will be arrested within a week for the threats on the street. Those who leave now? We're not here. You understand. The man looked at him. You are giving us a way out. I am giving a choice, Ray corrected, between what is right and what was planned. A long pause. Then the man nodded. Once. Briefly. He left through the side door. Ray, the sense of mana. One by one, 6 sources inside faded. They left. Outside, 4 also disappeared. They left. He returned to the hall. Lindsay was finishing the presentation of the collection. Warm applause. Grainver was smiling. Ray sat back in his seat. Jun, nearby, quietly, without turning his head. They left. Yes? You spoke with one of them? Yes? What did you say? The truth, said Ray. Jun was silent for a second. That was enough. This time, yes, said Ray. Van Kess was arrested 6 days later, quietly. Without a public scandal, Say insisted on a closed process. Ray did not object. The goal was not shame. The goal was consequence. The heirs split after Kess's arrest. Some went into silence. Some continued to exist, but without their former confidence. The man from the corridor, Ray learned his name later through Nora. Tan Wei, a former battle mage. A month after the hearing, he submitted a request to the academy. For training. Private. Without publicity. Ray accepted. Grainver was surprised. You are taking a man who came to harm the students. A man who chose to leave when he could have caused harm, Ray corrected. That is a different man. You are not afraid. No. Why? Because 1,000 years ago, 3 people I considered friends betrayed me, said Ray. The system created the condition. A pause. Now I am creating a different condition. Let us see what comes of it. Grainver was silent for a long time. You are an impossible man, he said. I hear that often, said Ray. It is beginning to seem like your best quality. Mia brought new work. 30 pages, the manuscript neat. Not a draft, a final version. What is it about? Asked Ray. About systems that break people, said Mia. Not specifically about the case of Ray Darn. Universally. A pause. What conditions create a situation in which a good person does a bad thing? How it works. How to prevent it. Ray took the manuscript. Read for a long time. 30 dense pages with examples, with analysis, with conclusions. Clear thought, well expressed. A 17-year-old author. Finished reading. Raised his gaze. This is the best work you have written. I know, said Mia. Are you sure? Yes. Why? Because I was writing about what I understand from the inside, said Mia. Not from archives. From what I saw here. A pause. Senkar. Arsol. Day. Nora. They are all living examples of what I write about. How a condition changes people. How the right condition moves them in the right direction. Ray looked at her. 17 years old. She sees what I saw at 32 and understood only after 1,000 years of imprisonment. We publish, he said. Where? Everywhere, said Ray. All 3 academies. The Institute. Open edition. A pause, simultaneously. Mia stared. That will be loud. Yes, the heirs will react. Probably. That does not stop you. No. Me neither, said Mia. She was silent. Then, "Teacher." "Yes." "Thank you for not stopping me at the first work." "I never considered it," said Ray. "Many would have." "Many are afraid of intelligent 17-year-olds, said Ray. "I am not." "Why?" "Because 1,000 years ago, 3 intelligent adults were frightened of one powerful person," said Ray, "and did something foolish." A pause. "Intelligent 17-year-olds are not a threat. They are what makes the world better." Mia was silent for a long time. Then she did something Ray did not expect. She bowed. Not ceremoniously, simply, quietly. Took the manuscript. Left. Ray looked at the closed door. Vane wanted power. Ria wanted action. Theo wanted knowledge. Each wanted one thing. I do not want any one thing. I want Mia to write. I want Senkar to hear what no one heard before him. I want Day to walk down the street and not look back. I want Arsol to one day say to his father, "I understood you," and move forward. I want Yoon to teach the next ones. All of it at once. That is not power and not knowledge. That is how a world lives that has chosen to be a little better. He stood, took his coat. Outside the window, winter. The first snow that had melted several weeks ago now lay on the ground. White, quiet, with that particular silence that snow creates in a city. Ray went out into the street. Snow was falling. On his shoulders, on his hair, on his outstretched palm. 1,000 years in darkness, and now snow in the palm of his hand. That was enough. That was more than enough. 10 years had passed since the release. Ray, the same small room, the same city in the window. Much had changed. The academy program rewritten by half. Core Dog carried out a reform of battle magic. The small group method is now the standard for senior courses. New students are taught to feel before they know. Yun began to teach. His own group. 5, as it once was. Ray sometimes came to watch. Watched and recognized things. Something had been passed on exactly. Something had become different. Better in some places. Good. It should be a little different. Otherwise it does not live. Mia, 27 years old. A professor. The youngest in the Academy's history. Her work on systems that break people has been translated into 4 languages. Read in 6 countries. Senkar opened a new field. Sound medicine. 5 students, a first clinic. Small, but it works. Arsul, level 95. His father came once to a session and asked to have the method explained. Ray explained. Gorsol was silent for a long time, then said, "I did not understand before." 3 words. For him, that is a lot. Day, a mage of space and sound. The only one in the world with a dual class. He was writing his own works now. Unexpectedly well? Yun laughed. Not without talent in the family. Nora returned to the army. A colonel. Changing what she could from within. She wrote to Ray once a month, briefly, to the point. Once she wrote, Article 17 of the Army Code has been amended. Your idea, my hand. Tanway studied for 2 years. Quietly, without unnecessary words. He left. Wrote one letter. I understood that building is better than holding on to what belongs to others. The heirs still existed, but fewer, quieter, without the confidence that had been there before. The version of history they held now competed with dozens of other versions. With archives, with Mia's works, with open hearings. A lie does not disappear when the truth exists. A lie diminishes, slowly, properly. Ray opened a notebook. The last page. He finished writing. 10 years. What exists? Yoon teaches. Mia is a professor. Senkar, a clinic. Arsol, 95, understands rather than simply does. Day writes. Nora changes the army. Tanway builds. What lies ahead is unknown. Good. Vane. Ria. Theo. Eric. Dead. Long ago. What they did is also dying. Slowly. Properly. What I do lives. That is enough. He closed the notebook. The last one. He took out a new one, bought that morning. Clean, with empty pages. Opened the first page. Wrote at the top. What I know must live longer than me. The same line as 10 years ago. It had not changed. It should not. He set down the pen, looked out the window. Spring, the first of this year. The snow was gone. The trees along the street with their first leaves. That tender green that exists only at the very beginning of spring and lasts a week before becoming richer, more ordinary. Ray looked at that green. 1,000 years in darkness. 10 years here. Ahead. However long there will be. It does not matter how long, what matters is how. He stood, put on his coat, went to the academy. Tomorrow a new group, 5 unfamiliar students. They will sit on the floor with their eyes closed, learning to feel the heart. A simple beginning. Everything great begins with something simple. Always.